Hey crafty people, welcome back to my channel, and in case you're new here, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. I do paper crafting, card making, junk journaling, and mixed media art. Let's get crafting! Oh, welcome to my channel. It is time for March's Christmas card. If you're new to my channel, each month I do a video where I work on a Christmas card in the hopes of having my Christmas cards done before Christmas. And this year, each month I've picked a craft supply I'm going to focus on. And since March is patterned papers, I decided what we'd do is a paper piecing technique using stamping and patterned paper. So I've got out my selection of patterned papers. I've got out the stamp I'm going to use, and it's a really old My Favorite Things stamp, which sadly they went out of business earlier this year, which makes me very, very sad. And I just realized there's one thing I'm missing that I'm going to want. But that's okay, I can get that in a minute. So we're going to start by stamping the image multiple times. Let me grab my Misty, which you don't need, it just makes life easier. I'm also going to grab a piece of Express It paper. So I'm going to start, by bumping the camera. Sorry about that. By stamping it on my white paper, and I'm using Express It because the bits that aren't going to get paper piece, I'm going to color with my Copic markers. So let's go ahead and stamp this using Memento Tuxedo Black. Ink up and stamp again. All right, that's pretty good. So that's layer one. Now we are going to stamp this multiple more times in order to get the pieces for our paper piecing. So for that, I'm going to switch to my VersaFine because it just stamps a bit better, but you can't use VersaFine with Copic markers because it'll bleed onto your marker. And I'm going to focus my inking on the pieces I'm planning on using this for. So this is going to be her shirt. So I'm not worried about all the other bits. Then this is going to be the chair she's sitting in. Trying to decide because this is going to be for the presents, maybe the wrapping paper, if I want it going this way or this way. I think we'll go this way. Now we'll get presents and wrapping paper. This for the tree. All right. Next step is to fussy cut everything out, although I also think I want to grab some blue cardstock for her pants and some, I think, red and green for bows and presents, maybe. Definitely need blue for her pants. Let me go grab that. All right, so I got a scrap of blue. I always forget I'm only needing to ink certain parts of the stamp and just end up inking most of the stamp anyway, but that's fine. Playing with the idea of whether I want to use the slippers in the blue, so that's why I went back and stamped that. All right, so let's set this aside for a moment. Our next step is, I'm going to cut this down to size. Then what we are going to do is, let's start with the Christmas tree, and I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut out the tree. This is a great technique for using your scraps. Now I'm going to take my fingertip blade and come in and do her feet, because those I'm going to color. Now another option would be to stamp this again on the white paper and just layer it on top. But I don't want to have this get too thick. That will get layered on like so. I think I'm going to come in, trim a little more of this off. Again, just to reduce the number of layers we have. And I'm still trying to figure out what this bit sticking out over here is. And whether I should trim it out or leave it. That'll go on like so. I think I am going to trim this piece out. That makes sense. And just leave the rest. Let's get the chair cut out, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of the pieces and come back and show you, because yeah, I think it'll get pretty tedious if you're sitting here watching me fussy cut out all the little pieces. So the chair will go there, and the tree goes like so. And I am gonna cut out the rest of the pieces and then I'll be back. Okay, so into a few snags. The first being, I cannot find where I put my neutral colored Copic markers, because I have two cases, one with all of the colors and then one with all of the neutrals, and I can't find it right now. So what we are going to do is, use some Distress ink, and I think I'm gonna use a Fantastics. It's a color blending stump, and so for the few spots that I was going to color with Copics, I'm gonna color with Distress inks. All right, that's okay, but not great. I did find red, so I can do the ribbon on here in red. And as long as you're using a dye-based ink, it's fine. With your Copic markers, it's just pigment-based inks you can't use. I also decided I wanted wallpaper, so I went ahead and stamped this. This is going to go down on as our base, and I'm just realizing now I'm going to have to cut out all of those, the feet and the hands again. All right, let me do that real quick. Actually, you know what? There's nothing of that showing there. And because we're going to be layering stuff on top here, I can just do that. Let's grab another Fantastic and use it to do the hands and the feet, and I'm going to use antique linen. Doing this, and I'm wondering if a blending brush wouldn't have been better, given that there's stuff layering on top of here. This is the only spot, of course, that I don't have stuff layering on top. All right. Now we can start gluing our pieces on. So let's glue this on first. You know what, I did that, and now I'm realizing, no, we need to do the floor too. So let's do the floor before we layer the rest of the pieces. And what I figured I'd do is antique linen, and I don't need to be too particularly careful, because other than this guy, which the antique linen's not gonna do much over top of, all the rest of this is gonna get covered when we paper piece. So that's our step one on the floor. And then step two was I was gonna do this wood grain stenciling. I'm not liking that. All right, we're just gonna go in with Vintage Photo. All right, let's do the rest of the paper piecing and see how it goes. All right, let's put our chair on. Uh-oh, the tree's supposed to go on first. Fortunately, I can lift that bit up. Okay. Make sure you pay attention to which one. If you're layering, go on first, because yeah, I've got a little bit of the armrest on top. Now, I didn't use particularly thick pattern paper for this. That tends to work a little bit better when you're doing all of these layers than if you used really thick paper. All right, I've got her pants. Before I put it on, I'm gonna grab a Copic multi-liner and kind of go around the edge, because this is not a solid core paper and the white really is kind of showing up. So I'm gonna do that. Now the shirt, where are my little pieces? Where did my, right in front of my face. I had originally planned on doing this for the shirt, but when I put it on, I was like, it doesn't stand out enough against the couch. So I did another shirt. Where'd the other shirt go? I stamped it and then didn't cut it out. All right, let me get that out. That definitely stands out much better. I think I'm going to reinforce the edges on this one too. And I did go and stamp the bow on red cardstock, and I accidentally cut that piece off, so I went back in, cut it, and glued it on so I wouldn't lose it. Piece was so teeny tiny. I left it on and I figured I'd just trim it off once it dries. It is warmed up here because my glue is starting to get oozy. I think to clean up a little bit around the feet, I'm gonna just come in with a thinner multi-liner and basically go over the lines to make it there be less of a gap, and over here to kind of clean this up, I'm gonna come in. There, that's much better. Okay. All right, so I have pulled out a piece of paper that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is my standard card size. This is gonna go on it. I think I wanna get a dark green to go around as a mat. But before we do that, I want to put on some stickles for the ornaments on our tree. So I've got gold stickles for the garland and red for the ornaments. Isn't a line there, but I felt like it needed it. So We're improvising. Red for all the little bubbles. If you stop squeezing and swirl, you can eliminate like the Hershey Kiss effect for the most part. That not quite so much. Another thing you can do to help keep them from being weirdly shaped is tap a little bit underneath, or like flick your finger on the underside, and it'll help flatten them out. Problem here is this thing is a little on the old side, so it's a little thicker and it's not coming out as easily. Probably should have waited and let the gold dry before I started doing the red, but I am so very behind this weekend in recording videos that I did not have time for that. I'm gonna come in and try and fix this one that got a little gloopy and weirdly shaped. And the same for this guy. All right, I'm gonna set this aside, let it dry completely, and when that's done, we'll come back and do final assembly. Okay, so it's all dry. Let me give you a closer look. And I grabbed out a piece of pattern paper and I cut this to 5.5 by 4 1/4, which is my standard card size that I like to use. And this piece measures about 3 by 3.5. So I cut a piece of cardstock 3 1/4 by 3 3/4 to kind of mat it on. And I'm gonna just stick it on like that. Now, there is a sentiment that goes with this stamp set. This is something about needing an elf. But I'm reorganizing my stamps and have no idea where it is right now. So at some point later on, I'm going to add that to it. I also think I'm going to come in with some black soot distress ink and ink the edges of the frame of this piece because it didn't stamp perfectly. And so I think if we just use a little black soot, it'll reinforce that. Also covering up if I didn't cut it out perfectly, if there's any white left from the paper it was stamped on. Yeah, I think that works a little bit better. I want to do some, that spot up there is kind of bugging me that it's not stamped all the way. Just gonna grab one of my Copic multi-liners. Actually, I'm grabbing the one, and I'm just gonna do this all the way around now that I started it. All right, now we're just gonna glue it together. Getting this on the green mat is really not great for my ability to see where I'm gluing it. There we go. March's Christmas card is done, except for adding the sentiment, which I'll do once I find my sentiment stamp again. There you go. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that let YouTube know you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting.